Hi guys, and welcome back to another Final Fantasy VII Remake video. Now, as you know, Final Fantasy VII Remake has started to unearth a lot of lore within the Final Fantasy VII universe, and there's obviously, if you've followed the channel, you know that I made the video Sephiroth's perspective, Aerith's perspective, and also recently Avalanche Origins. Now, I'm going along the lines of those videos again today in the form of the Nanaki and the Seto storyline from the Final Fantasy VII story arc. And yeah, it's another area I feel in the Final Fantasy VII story that's, there's a lot of untapped potential there. And I just want to discuss a few certain scenarios that I'd like to see come part 2 or potentially 3, depending how far they go. We'll see the next part where we may see some type of Seto DLC or maybe more of a side mission, side content, which I think a lot of the fans over the years have always wanted to see when it comes down to Final Fantasy VII. So yeah, if you do like today's video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. With that being said, let's mosey. Final Fantasy VII was filled with a lot of emotional moments, but there's one in particular that I always find quite obviously moving. And I know we've had Aerith's death scene, don't get me wrong, that will always go down as the most emotional moment in the game, if not gaming history. But another that definitely brought a tear to my eye was the storyline of Nanaki, where obviously he found out the truth about his father, Seto. He always seemed to believe that Seto abandoned Cosmo Canyon, and he was ashamed of his father for years. And obviously it was only until Budgeon Harjan told him about what Seto actually done when he secretly defended the village from the G tribe, which he was ultimately turned to stone. He was petrified by some poison arrows, and the whole story for that part of the game was very moving anyway for me, and I'm sure it was for many people. And it's also one of those storylines that have never been explored to its fullest depth, because obviously back in '97 they couldn't do that. Game of the size of the game depending obviously on PS1 capabilities. And I think over the years that we've obviously loved Final Fantasy VII, it is one area of the game a lot of cult followers and obviously a lot of Final Fantasy VII fans would love to see explained more, would love to see fleshed out. And there is a lot of untapped potential there with the G tribe themselves. Seto, we all wanted to play Seto, we all wanted to cure him with Asuna, and it's just one of those stories that I would love to see expanded as the story moves on in the next episode, or maybe part 3, depending of how in depth they go or how far into the story arc they go with part 2. And there's just a few things that I think would make for a telling story, and I want to get into them today. Firstly, can this be DLC or within the main story? That's one thing I always like to obviously cover. Now obviously we know that that part of the storyline is quite pivotal, when you get to Cosmo Canyon with Nanaki and Cloud and the crew. And I suppose it'll have to be within the main game to a certain extent, or maybe we get a similar coverage of what we did get in the original, and then maybe there's some like side content where we're called back to Cosmo Canyon for a certain reason, in the sense of the DLC that it could be. It really depends on how in depth they go with this particular story arc, and I for one would welcome DLC or a bigger part of the game being dedicated to this particular story. And Seto's defending obviously Cosmo Canyon from the G tribe, which we don't know a whole lot about, and it'd be really interesting to know where they came from, why they're fighting Cosmo Canyon. Are they related to the ancients and subjects of that caliber? And as I touched on earlier, where you come back to Cosmo Canyon at a later date, you call back, it could be a way where you found a way to unpetrify Seto to tell his story, so that's how that could all unravel to a certain extent. And even that part in the story that we know where Budgeon Harjan shows Red obviously the truth, and he learns obviously of these feelings that he had for Seto are obviously false, as he leads him into the cave and it's all revealed. That itself is going to be quite compelling in general. And I'm sure the moment where Nanaki's howling at the moon with his petrified father next to him is going to be a moment to remember. And, you know, even if they do something like I suggested before, where they call back to Cosmo Canyon on a later date to obviously save Seto, it could be after Bugenhagen dies, for instance, and then when you unpetrify him, he becomes the new leader of Cosmos. He doesn't actually physically have to leave Cosmo Canyon. It can kind of start and end in Cosmo Canyon. We just get more lore on the G tribe, and obviously, you know, the Seto and Nanaki relationship, going from hatred and being ashamed to love and being proud of his father. You know, I think that'd be just a great moment to capture. And you know what, I'd find it really strange if they didn't go in more detail for 2 reasons. One, because the game's bigger. They've gone into a lot more detail over a lot of key areas in the game so far, especially, you know, in the Midgar area. You know, there's a lot of extra content that we kind of, you know, we didn't see anything to do with Jesse, Wedge and Biggs, and obviously there's a main, you know, part in the game where you're with the 3 of them, go topside. You learn a lot about Jesse's home life, you know, so they are fleshing out a lot of the game. So it would be strange if they didn't flesh it out, and, you know, so we didn't know a bit more about the G tribe, because even if you go online and look up G tribe, you know, on all the fandom sites and things like that, it's what you would expect and what you already know. They attacked Cosmo Canyon, Seto defended it. It doesn't say why they attacked, it doesn't say what they were after, or nothing like that. So it'd be a bit strange for them not to flesh that area out to give us more of obviously a meaningful story arc. And you know, the G tribe are in like a ghost form, so their origins are obviously unexplained. Where they came from, did they know the ancients, you know, were they about at that point in the timeline? And you know, there's a lot of obviously questions, as I say, that would be strange to leave out if they're obviously giving us a complete story. And you know, that's really all I've got to say on the matter. There's not really else I can say much more on it, apart from the fact that it's going to be a great iconic moment in Final Fantasy VII, you know, remake history. And I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Obviously, we haven't got much content at the moment, so I'm just coming up with ideas of what I would like to see going forward. And if I could have one particular story arc fleshed out, this is the one. As I say, it was such an upsetting moment seeing Nanaki howling at the moon with Seto petrified next to him. We've got to see some type of evolvement from that, and I cannot wait to see what obviously, you know, Square Enix bring to the table. Anyway, as I say, leave your comments down below what you'd be excited about for this particular part in the story. You know, I'll interact with everybody in the comments. But yeah, if you did enjoy this Final Fantasy VII Remake video and you do like this type of content, you know, on hopes and aspirations, hit the like button, let me know, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until next time, take care.